What's going on, y'all? It's your man, not your boy, your man Lit. And today on Lit Up, Spotlight is on Richard Walker. Richard Walker is a philanthropist, entrepreneur. He's doing great things in the community, working with children, and I'm talking about doing some really great things as far as giving the children a different perspective, a different way to enhance their futures. Before we talk about the things that he's doing today, I want you to get an understanding or get to know Rich from his past and the different things that have transpired that have ultimately mounted to who he is today and the things that he's doing. He's experienced a lot of what I would deem backhanded and malicious, specifically with the system, legal system, and people in the legal system. Rich, what's up with you, bro?
Yeah,
welcome
right.
to the show. Yes, sir.
Appreciate
How about
you, man. I'm all right. I'm blessed. I'm home.
That's right.
I'm living life right now, and things are getting better.
Okay, you say that you're at home. Okay, so when you say that you're at home, I mean, give the people a little bit of what you mean by you're at home.
Well, 1992, I was arrested, sent to life for prison, sent to prison for life for the rest of my life.
Wow, yeah.
And didn't actually know I had life or was never coming home until my mom passed away.
So life without the possibility of parole.
Well, I had life in prison, meaning my paperwork said LIFE, not 30 to 60. So I was under the impression that if worse come to worse, in 10 years I was eligible for parole, which is what my attorney was telling me.
Wow.
But when my mom passed and it was time to go to the funeral, and they tried to pay for me to go to the funeral, they said, well, he's not eligible, which we didn't understand. And they said, well, he has life. But we were all stuck on what the attorney told us. He's coming home in maybe 10 years. They said, that doesn't pertain to him. Your son has life, and he's never coming home.
That is bizarre because with an attorney, you had an attorney telling you this.
I had an attorney telling me that.
Why? I mean, I know that he's versed in the law. He had to be in order to be practicing law. Why would he tell you that?
Well, to go back, when I was arrested, I immediately contacted my father, who at the time was the director of the Police Athletic League.
Right.
And told him what happened. He ended up getting a friend of his best friend, I think it was, who was an attorney. Mm-hmm. Well, after hiring an attorney, they seized race cars I had, my other vehicles. They seized $120,000 from me also. Mm. So prior to me going to court, 5 months later down the line, they returned the vehicles to me, which cost me $5,000 for 5 months of storage. The attorney told me they never gave the money back, and I just kept trying to figure out what's going on. Why wouldn't they give the money back? They raided my house, no drugs, nothing illegal.
This was prior to you going to prison?
Prior to me going to prison.
Okay, and you said that what was it, some kind of informant's tip or?
It was an informant. I used to have a shop on Finkel in Detroit on the corner of LaSure. I had a lot of guys from the neighborhood used to come and hang out. Mm-hmm. They had a guy that said he was coming from Ann Arbor, a white guy that mm-hmm. I didn't know, never met. He said someone was bringing him to my shop. He was coming in getting drugs from Rich.
Wow.
So he described a race car trailer that the guy went into that he seen the guy get the drugs from. And I end up having a couple race car trailers. I sold one, and I kept one. But the trailer that he described never had writing or pinstriping or nothing on it. So it wasn't my trailer that he described. So to make a long story short, I end up going to court, for a preliminary exam. And my lawyer said, we're going to waive this. And I said, well, how does this work? And he said, well, we'll just waive it and we'll just take it to court. So he's the attorney. I don't know anything about what's going on.
Relying on his advice.
I'm relying on his advice. Well, something told me to stay in the courtroom or go see what was going on. So I went in the courtroom and sat down. While I'm sitting there, this white guy that actually came to my place of business, that's it, the guy brought him up there to get drugs, they asked him, do you see Richard Walker in the courtroom? Now, my heart is beating fast because I've never seen this guy in my life. So I'm sitting in the middle I'm sitting to the right side of the courtroom. Then you got the middle, and then there's another section. The white guy stood up in the courtroom, and that's when my heart got to beating fast. And they said, do you see him? Can you point him out? And he said, yes. He stood up and pointed out another guy that was maybe 160 pounds, 170, maybe 6'2", about your complexion, bald-headed, and said he was sure that that was the guy he seen him get the drugs from. They said, are you positive? He said, yes.
So, and at the time that he made this in court identification, there was no way possible he could have gotten you to, I mean, that he could have gotten mixed up.
No,
you didn't look anything like that. You didn't have a strong tan or nothing.
That's like comparing me to you.
Right now.
Right now. This how it worked.
Okay.
So they asked him, was he sure? He said he was positive. So I'm sitting next to the lawyer, and I'm like, aren't you supposed to say something? You got to get up and say something. He said, well, we're not supposed to be in here in the first place. I said, yeah, but you got to say something. You got to let the court know, because he's identifying.
Your client.
Yeah, identifying that who he thought was me.
Right.
Well, he got up and he did say something and put it on the record. Well, we ended up leaving out of the courtroom. We're standing in the hallway. I hear somebody say, there goes Richard Walker right there. When I turn around, he's standing with the police. The police show him who I am now.
That is...
It's crazy.
Ridiculous.
So they show him who I am. So now, when we end up going to court, the same guy that identified the other person as me, they bring the guy back into the courtroom, and now he changes his identity to fit me. But what I found out later was the person that he identified as me was on the case, was also a co-defendant. They had us on the case, I think was 28 people.
Wow.
And the guy that he identified, the guy, Johnny Man, who was bringing him down there to get drugs, he seen who he was getting them from, and he identified the person. But they made him change his identification to fit me when we went to trial.
I got one question. The trailer that you said he saw, the trailer was always parked at your place of business on the car shop that you had, the detailing shop?
Well, it wasn't always parked there because I kept it at the bus terminal on Schaefer. Would only bring it up there when we needed it.
Every so often?
Yes, every so often. But he told them it was a white race car trailer. It had pinstriping and writing like the name of a racing team. So I supplied my attorney with the photos of my trailers.
Okay, wait, I don't want to cut you off, but you were a race car driver. You were driving racing cars, you had cars.
Traveling the country.
Okay, and so, okay, because you did have the articles to USA Today.
There was Detroit News, it might have been USA Today, Washtenaw newspaper, there's a bunch of articles. I would bring the trailer around to the shop when I needed it. My father will allow me to park the race car trailer over where he parked the police athletic buses at.
The car, Night Train.
Night Train.
That was named after your father.
It was named after my father, who is one of the NFL 100 greatest players of all time right now. He's one of the greatest NFL cornerbacks of all time. He's on Madden football.
Who is he? You ain't say his name.
Dick Night Train Lane.
Okay.
One of the greatest football players of all times.
And I met him, y'all. We just trying to get y'all familiar with it. It's not like I don't know. I done sat in his office. His furniture was humongous. I used to feel like a kid going in there sitting in his office. He was at the Northwest Activity Center.
Northwest Activity Center.
Yeah. Okay. So I just want to let you know that this is Dick Night Train Lane's son. Okay.
I'm one of 3 sons.
One of, but.
And all of us are named Richard. And all of us have the same father, but we all had different moms.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, okay, we'll finish telling them. Just want to let y'all know.
All right, so that went to tell you about one of the persons who testified against me. Well, the attorney came to me and said, well, they have you on telephone conversation talking about drugs. And
Kilos.
I said, they don't have me. I said, couldn't be me. He said, well, it's you. I said, well, how do you know it's me? He said, well, your phone number is connected to it.
This was your attorney telling you this?
This is my attorney telling me this.
Telling you it is you?
He's telling me it's me.
Wow.
So what I ended up doing was, well, what are you saying? How are you saying it's me? He said, well, they have you on phone conversation. I said, so get a copy of it and let me listen to this because I know it's not me. He gets the phone conversation. He brings it to the house. We're sitting at the table. He plays it. And when we started listening to it, he said, that's not you. I said, I told you it's not me. He said, do you know who that is? I said, yeah, I know who it is. He said, well, who is it? I said, that's a friend of mine that used to go to the track racing with us a lot. Yeah. I said, I used to call him because he was frequent at the track. He was very knowledgeable of the track. So he kind of was hanging around and I liked to take him with us.
Right.
So I said, every time I call you, man, I can't catch up with you. He said, well, I don't have a pager or a phone or nothing. And I had a pager on the table. I said, well, there's a pager right there. I said, just pay the bill on it. It ain't but $10 a month.
But it was in your name?
It was in my name.
Wow. Okay.
So after he told the prosecutor, that's not my client, he said, the prosecutor said, okay, we can't use it.
But initially, without even hearing it, once he got it from the prosecutor, he assumed that it was you, and he had it without listening, doing any further investigation or anything until that day when he listened to it with you.
Yep.
Sad situation, but it's true.
So now they tell him, well, we can't use that. Come up later, we're going to trial. We end up having another gentleman from my neighborhood that comes in and testifies that he's been knowing me all my life and he's been getting drugs from me. Or I never met this guy, never knew him, never even heard of him. I end up knowing about his brother because his brother's vehicle got stolen, and I let him place some posters and stuff up in the shop.
Okay.
And that was the only way I knew of his brother, but I never met him. And they allowed him to testify against me. And there was another guy, Johnny Man, who used to come to the shop also. And he was the last person that they end up bringing in to testify against me.
Okay, let me ask you this. Now, you say the shop, so, I mean, these people were in the race world too, or they were just customizing car? I mean, why were they coming to the shop?
Well, I did customizing on cars back then. I was doing the stereos, alarms, the radios. All the kids in the neighborhood would stop by coming from school because they hear the loud music.
And see the cars.
And see the cars. They were interested. And then we had the guys from the neighborhood that all would come hang out with us, want to go to the track. Back then, we were street racing.
So you done got caught up in the middle of something. And you got people coming out the woodworks from all over the state. I mean, not all over, but from different parts of the state pointing at you, and not really pointing at you because they don't know you, but they've heard your name. You got the police trying to connect the dots. You are allowing people, you got an open door policy with your customers. You clearly, I know we've seen it time and time again where somebody may have a shop and then you see all the cars up there. And people gather and frequent, and females coming up, males coming up, admiring the cars and talking. And it's clear that it was a lot of mishaps, but, coincidental stuff that pulled you into it. But once you got pulled into it, from what I'm hearing, the attorney that you had was...
He was horrible.
Garbage, right.
Had I took the preliminary exam... Mm-hmm. And that guy identified somebody else, the case would have most likely been thrown out because they charged me with a conspiracy case, meaning there was no drugs. They just went off the testimony of three people that were on the case. So you got to have three or more
to have a conspiracy.
So they had the white guy from Ypsi, Ann Arbor, that identified somebody else. He came in, and then we had this other guy, Parnell Burgess, from over in my neighborhood that I never met. They had him come in. He later recanted his testimony to say that he lied. And then they had Johnny Man. He was the last one. So we were actually talking to his attorney at the time, which was a well-known attorney. And my attorney asked him, he said, well, your client is the only one that knows my client. Is he testifying against him? He said, no. But when I ended up going to trial, he came in and testified against me.
Wow.
So that made the three people, so that made the conspiracy.
I got another question. Okay, so clearly it didn't work out. I mean, you were sentenced and found guilty, your sentence, got natural life. Let me ask you this. How was it that you came out of it?
Well, it all started off when I was in Michigan Reformatory. I ended up writing a little short letter to the prosecutor's office and asking them for a copy of the receipts of the stuff that was seized from me.
Okay.
So I ended up with the receipts for the vehicles they gave back, and I also ended up with the receipt of the money that they gave back.
Okay.
So the money that they gave back, the $120,000,
right,
was given back to the attorney 3 months prior to me even going to trial.
Prior to you reaching trial?
They had already given him the money back, and I wasn't notified.
So the money, none of the property or none of the money that was seized could be connected to drugs.
Nope.
Drug sales, okay.
So they gave the money back to him. The crazy part is, I looked at these receipts, I put them on my foot locker and pushed them up under my bunk. A couple days later, I'm looking at them again. I looked at the date, and the date was 3 months prior to me going to trial.
Right.
So now I'm starting to put two and two together. He didn't want me to testify at trial. I wanted to testify. He kept saying, well, what are you going to say? I said, well, I'm going to let them know. Well, they seized my cars. They seized my money. They gave all the cars back. Why would they not give the money back? He said, well, the prosecutor's going to try to say stuff that's going to screw you up. And I said, well, it can't screw me up. I'm telling the truth.
Right.
It's not going to screw me up. Well, we need to keep you off the stand long as possible. And I've already talked to the judge. And I'm like, what do you mean you talked to the judge? He said, well, the judge was hired by Governor Blanchard, our former governor from years ago. And I know Blanchard, we're pretty good friends. So pretty much things are already set to go. You're good. So he's basically telling me that
you're not going to prison.
I'm not going to prison.
And he's basing this upon his relationship with ex-Governor Blanchard and the judge.
So he's the attorney. I'm following his lead. I'm just going along with. I've never been to court before. I'm just following his lead. He's the lawyer.
Because you're not familiar with the system.
I'm not familiar at all.
All right.
So I ended up getting those receipts, and that's how I found out he ended up with the money. So time moves on. I decide I got to write a grievance because he didn't do what he was supposed to do. I got sent away for life. Something tells me I got to have a little bit more evidence than just to say he stole my money. So I called my sister one day from the prison.
You were communicating with him prior to this?
Yeah.
I mean, he was taking your calls and everything?
He was taking the calls because he kept telling me, well, don't worry about it. We're going to get you out on appeal, and just had my hopes up high, and told me, well, now we got to get you an appeals lawyer. I got one of the best guys ever. He's a friend of mine.
Right.
He turns me on to his buddy.
Right.
So I'm thinking, okay, if worse come to worse, whatever this appeal is, we're going to deal with it, and I'm going to be out of here.
Right.
Well, it didn't turn out that way.
You didn't lose any faith in him after you wound up getting convicted?
After I got convicted, he tried to act like he was helping me by giving me the appeals lawyer and giving my girlfriend little bits of money here and there to try to keep us calm down.
Oh,
so he was saying, well, I'm paying her the money back. I'm giving her here and there. So the only way I was able to really lock him in and get him to admit everything, I called my sister from the prison. I said, do you have a tape recorder? She said, no, I have a answering machine. I said, will it tape our telephone conversations right now? She said, yeah. I said, tape it and see what happens. So she ended up taping it, and I said, I want you to do me a favor. Call the operator right now. She called the operator on the three-way. I said, I want to make a collect call to Howard Wittenberg from Richard Walker. And they said, will you accept? And he said, yes.
He thought you was calling from the prison.
He thought I was calling from a prison. He didn't know that I was on the third-way party. Right. So I had my questions already wrote down that I was going to ask him. I had a bunch of questions. So in prison, you only get 15 minutes per phone call.
Okay.
So I'm asking the questions and I'm checking them off. And sometimes I'm doubling up on the questions just to be clear.
Sure. Right.
Yeah. So the phone call cuts off after 15 minutes. I call my sister back. We do it again. I get him 45 minutes of conversation. I've got him on the conversation and said, listen, I know I messed up. I was going through some stuff with my wife. I'm going to give you some money or extra money to keep it between us and we'll work it out or whatever. So I got him to admit everything on the telephone conversation.
Wow. And that's how you wind up getting home.
I used that telephone conversation. I filed a grievance. I'm calling the grievance commission with my family. They're calling. Well, when are they going to hear the case? And they say, well, sir, you know, we got thousands of cases. Everybody was writing. So I asked my stepmom, I said, well, why don't you send them a tape? I said, if you got a tape in the mail, somebody sent it to you, aren't you going to listen to it to see what's on it?
Right.
She said, yeah. So she mailed the tape. They contacted her and told her they were filing a formal complaint against him.
Okay.
So that started.
That was at the Attorney Grievance Commission.
That was at the Attorney Grievance Commission.
Okay.
So now they appoint me an attorney to represent me. He has to get an attorney to represent him, and then there's three panel judges in there.
Tribunal, basically.
Yep, and they hear the case. So they asked him a bunch of questions. He told them I was lying. I'd say anything to get out of prison. That I took a lie detector test and I failed it. He told them all of this. So when it got to me, they said, Mr. Walker, what do you have to say about this? I said, well, you're not going to believe me anyway. They said, why? I said, because I would lie to you and I'd do anything and say anything
to get out of prison.
They said, you do that? I said, I sure would. I said, but I don't have to. And they said, what do you mean? They said, what do you mean? I said, I have my tape conversation with Mr. Wittenberg.
What's his name? You said
Howard J. Wittenberg.
Howard J. Wittenberg. He's not practicing law no more, man.
They took his license.
Okay. Is he affiliated with anybody? Anybody should be watching out for?
Anybody that may have had him in the past behind this, or if somebody sees something similar, because, and just to go off track for a minute, I did take a lie detector test and I passed it. And he set the lie detector test up.
Paid for it.
He asked me, did I pay the gentleman for the lie detector test? I said, no. So I pulled the money out and he said, well, you go ahead and pay him. And then he said, no, give me the money. I'll pay him. So I gave him the money. And the guy had already told me, he said, well, you passed the test. But Wittenberg ended up telling the judges that I failed it.
Let me ask you this though. Okay, now that was for the initial case. That didn't have nothing to do with the. This was just the grievance commission. Okay.
So while we're in front of the grievance commission, just like I said, they asked me, would you lie? And well, I told them I'd lie to get out of here, but I don't have to. They said, what do you mean? I said, well, I tape recorded me and Mr. Wood.
Time to say.
Yeah.
I don't have to. And then you ask them why, and you like push play.
Push play. But this is what I did. I said, because I tape recorded our conversation and I have it transcribed already. So there was like 52 pages.
Okay.
So I gave my attorney a copy. I had a copy. The three judges had a copy. His attorney had a copy. He had a copy, and my step-parents were there. They had a copy.
This is a moment for a movie. I'm telling you.
Right.
The drama.
So now he said, well, that's illegal. They can't do that. They can't use tape record him without knowing. And I said, and I had cited the case law, and it said under such and such that if there's a third-party consent, the phone conversation can be used. My sister was the third party.
That's a cold piece there.
So now it went from we can't use that till, well, you got the transcript here. Well, how do we know the transcript is accurate?
You still had it.
So I said, well, why don't we do this? My stepmom has the tape. They can play the tape, and we can follow along. And if there's any discrepancy, we can correct them as we go.
Mm-hmm.
So now it gets to me with the phone conversation and me asking him, was you ever going to tell me you stole my money? And he said, yeah, my wife was my witness. I'm going to give you your money back, plus I'll, kind of give you some extra just to, to work things out.
Mm-hmm.
And they asked him, well, did Richard take the lie detector test? They said, yeah, but he failed. They said, well, what happened to the test results? Oh, I don't know. Well, who was the guy that gave the test result, the test? Well, I don't remember. So who hired this guy? I said, he hired him and had me come to the office.
Right.
And he said, so you had him take the lie detector test. You got everything set up. You don't know who the guy is. You know nothing. And now he's sitting there looking crazy.
Right.
So they're asking him all these questions, and they had already subpoenaed his bank account. Mm-hmm. So when they look at the bank account, it shows $120,000 of my money deposited into his bank account. It showed that money came out every single day the bank was open until it was depleted down to zero. And he was pulling it out, $8,000, always under $10,000, so he never had to do anything with the IRS. The craziest part is the check was written to my attorney in his name alone for $120,000.
Of your money.
Of my money.
Not with your name, no relative, none of your, nothing.
Nothing. So they end up having the prosecutor come in. They asked the prosecutor, what's the normal procedure for turning money over to a person that has been seized from? Mm-hmm. And he said, well, we put his name, the attorney's name on there, and we put the client's name on there. And he said, what is the purpose of putting the attorney's name on there? It basically ensures that the attorney gets paid if you owe him anything. Mm. So he said, so how did Mr. Wittenberg end up with a check for $120,000 in his name alone? So they asked the prosecutor, did you get some of this money? No, I didn't get any. So you can't explain to us why you gave him all this money.
Right. This is the prosecutor. That is.
So they told him get out of there. So they
told him to get out. He should have been up against charges too, though,
right,
for even giving your money to that man.
Right. So they asked him to leave. They end up calling the appeals attorney in that was sent to me from Mr. Wittenberg.
Wow.
So now, once he's doing my appeal, I tell him Mr. Wittenberg has stolen from me. He didn't tell the judge that the money was given back. I told him I actually have a handwritten receipt. When I found out he stole the money, I made him come up to the prison, and they give us a pass when you come out on a visit. Mm-hmm. Well, he came to visit me because I was pissed off and I wanted to talk about the money.
Okay.
So I said, before you leave here, you're going to write me an IOU for some of that money. So I went to the officer's desk, I got my pass, brung it back, made him write me an IOU for some of that money that he stole. Mm-hmm. And when I went back to the unit, you have to turn the pass in.
Wow. Mm.
So I turned the pass in.
Forgot that he had the IOU on there.
No, sir. I went back and stole my pass.
That's how to go.
I stole my pass. Made copies of it, put it in the mail, send it home. Now I had a handwritten statement from him for some of the money that he stole.
Right. Okay.
So I got a copy of that now. So it was like, man, it just got crazy. So they're talking to the appellate attorney, and they asked him, well, did Richard tell you that the lawyer stole his money and that he didn't represent him properly? And he said, yeah. And they said, well, why didn't you turn the lawyer in? It's your duty if you find out another lawyer has committed a crime that you're supposed to turn him in. He said, well, I didn't believe him. He said,
wow.
Did he tell you he had a handwritten note? He said, yes. He said, did he tell you that he had him on tape? He said, yes. And he said, you still didn't believe him? He had all of this? They said, you get out of here too.
That's them covering each other's tracks,
They don't want to tell on each other.
That's great. I mean, but systematically, to a certain extent, it's crazy how these people do this. I'm talking about you got police who watch other police brutalize, kill, rape, murder, do all kind of stuff, don't say nothing. Then you got the attorneys who are supposed to be, I mean, and all these people, well, not necessarily attorneys, but I'm not sure if attorneys are considered civil servants. But they're officers of the court, and they're supposed to uphold the law.
But in my case, they were covering for each other.
Right.
Because you got him, the prosecutor giving him the money, and
the appellate attorney
not telling on him, and I'm showing him the evidence I have.
The proof, right.
So I'm just sitting in prison basically rotting away.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think that during the course of your trial or, you know, the whole ordeal, prior to you getting the life sentence, that he or they were conspiring, or he had Jay Wittenberg,
yep.
right? Do you think that he initially was trying to sabotage your case so that you would wind up in prison, so that he would have access to those things? And also, do you think that it's clear that he wasn't acting alone, but they were conspiring?
The conspiracy came in with the attorney in the prosecutor's office.
Right. And the appellate attorney.
And the appellate attorney. They kept this all a secret. They actually kept it from the judge. My attorney never allowed me to testify.
Right. So that seems, he didn't even want you at the preliminary exam.
Didn't want me at there.
That's like from the onset that he was on something.
From the very beginning.
Man.
So after the 3 panels judges asked all these questions, I was supposed to come to the next day. I was supposed to show up for a hearing again. The officers didn't come get me on time. They assigned a new officer to my case.
Transporting you from prison to
prison to Pontiac for the grievance hearing. So I come in late. As I'm coming in late in the van, I see Wittenberg walking down the street. So I'm looking like, what's going on? When I get upstairs, my stepmother say, "It's over with, baby." I was like, "What do you mean it's over with?" I said, "They just came and got me." I said, "This is a bunch of bull. What's going on?" And she was like, "Just calm down." I said, "Calm down." I said, "They've been playing games with me the whole time."
Right.
She was like, "Baby, just listen." She said they took his license, but it still hadn't clicked into me yet. But she was talking. I was like, "What do you mean they clicked him?" She said, "He can't practice law. They taking his license." So I still don't know what that means. It ain't kicked in. So I end up going back to prison. My stepmom said, "Call me." I called her the next day. She said, "You remember the 3 panel judges?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "One of the judges called me and wants to know if he could take your case for free."
Wow. That was one of the
judges that sat on the panel that took his license.
That's right. That's
so
right. Now I'm applauding him for stepping up.
Well, check this out.
What's his name?
It was Gable, Miller, and Cohen.
Okay.
I believe it was 3 of them.
Big ups to them, because
I
appreciate that.
So now she said, "Call me the next day." And I'm telling my stepmom, I said, "Well, I'll call you the weekend. The calls are expensive." She's like, "No, you call me tomorrow." She said, I called her the next day. She said, "Baby, you're not going to believe this." I said, "What?" She said, "The other 2 judges on the panel also want to come on and take your case, to assist him to take your case for free."
Okay, so you done been through the ringer with this lawyer, the situation. You make it home. Now what? What happens then?
Well, I got granted a new trial. That's what ended up happening with those 5 attorneys that I had. We went back in front of the judge. The judge said, "Who's representing Mr. Walker?" All 5 of them stood up. All 5 stood up, and he said, "All of you are representing Mr. Walker?" They said, "Yes, we are, Your Honor." And he wanted to know why I did not testify in my previous. And I said, "My attorney advised me not to." And he said, "Why?" I said, "Well, he told me the prosecutor would say stuff to try to confuse me." And I told him that wouldn't happen. And I said, then he went on to say, "Well, you were hired by Governor Blanchard, and him and Governor Blanchard were friends, that everything was set and there was nothing for me to worry about." And he said, I don't know nothing about that."
Now this was the judge.
This was the actual judge that gave me life in prison. He said, "I don't know." And he said, "So what would you have said?" I said, "Well, Your Honor, they took all these cars from me, probably a couple $100,000 worth of cars, for 5 months, charged me $5,000 for storage to get them back. And they seized $120,000 from me and gave it back 3 months before I even came before you. But my attorney never told me they gave the money back. He never informed you they gave the money back. So you were probably under the impression it was drug proceeds.
Right.
And he went on to ask a few questions, and based on what I heard here today, is what he said, I'm going to grant you a new trial. So right then, the attorneys asked for appeal bond. Now they want to look at your prison record to see if you've been in any trouble. Because if you've been in any trouble now, he's not going to give you no bond.
Right.
But then I thought about that. During the time that I was in here, I've had a couple fights and stuff. Had I really gotten in trouble, had I hurt somebody or killed somebody, now
you'd be stuck.
I'm stuck.
Right. Right. And you shouldn't have been there in the first place.
I shouldn't have been there in the first place, but now you're going to be punished once again. So he looked at my file and he said, well, all I asked is that you kept a job while you was there and stay out of trouble. And based on that, you didn't get in any trouble. I grant you a bond.
Wow.
So I got out on appeals bond.
Okay.
And they were still giving me the runarounds about going home. I was supposed to be at the prison to be released. I was supposed to be at the county jail. And the officer that was transporting me, he got so pissed off with them playing games. He said, if Mr. Walker's family is at the county jail when I get there, or they went to the prison and they're not here, I'm taking him home personally.
Wow.
So after all that was said and done, I gave him my phone number. And he was telling me, he said, man, the judge was kind of pissed off behind this, the way they was treating you.
Oh, he was.
This is what he said.
Okay.
So, excuse me. So he said he was kind of pissed off. But I said, my sister said, we're going to have a barbecue for Richard. If you want to come by, you can come. So he ended up coming and telling us how the judge felt about everything and how they took him off the case because they said he was getting too familiar with the family. They pulled him off the case and bringing me to court late. And the judge put him back on the case. He was a nice guy. His name was Clemens from Washtenaw County.
Okay.
Real nice gentleman. And
so let me ask you this. What was your take on the judge after this? Did he, I mean, knowing that the mistakes had been made or that there was some underhanded things going on, did his demeanor change? Was he sympathetic to your case? I know he gave you the bond and everything. He didn't have to. He reversed it. And a lot of times you don't see that. But do you think that, how did you see him? After
all of this took place, I've been in front of that judge prior to all of this leading up to this. I went back in front of the judge for a new trial based on the testimony of the guy, Parnell Burgess, who testified against me, who I didn't know. Okay. Who came back and said, well, they forced me to do that. They forced me to testify. He recanted his testimony, and the judge said, you're in prison now, so pretty much you're probably scared. Go back to prison is basically what he said. He threw it out. So now... Wow.
This is the same judge.
The same judge. And then I even told the judge, the guy identified somebody else at me at a preliminary exam that I didn't take. So now here we got somebody recanting. We got somebody identified somebody else. So all that leaves now is the one guy that I did know, Johnny Man, who was bringing the guy up to my shop to get drugs from the other guy that was on the case. So now that leaves one person, which means there's no conspiracy with one person. Right. So I felt like then the judge could have threw the case out and we've been done with it, been dismissed. Right. Well, now he grants me a new trial. I've got these 3 other lawyers come forward and say, hey, we'll take your case for free. Right. Prominent lawyer from Southfield, Neil Fink. Okay. So, okay, I'm kind of excited about this. We want to get this thrown out now or whatever. So when he comes to me, he said, well, you know that money was drug money, right? I said, it wasn't drug money. They gave me my money back. My lawyer stole it. Well, but I'm just saying it's drug money. I said, no, it's not drug money. And I'm getting frustrated with him because it feels like this whole thing is falling in on me now. You're trying to get me to admit to something. Or to say something because the way it's looking now is like a lawsuit. You know, it's kind of looking like a lawsuit. I'm just ready to go home. And I'm getting so frustrated with him telling me, well, this is drug money. I said, they don't give drug money back.
Right. If they can tie the drugs.
Right. But they gave the money back to the attorney, and he hid it from the judge. And I was and spent it. And I was so frustrated. I said, whatever it takes for me to leave and get up out of here today and go home, what do we need to do? Because I'm tired of this. I can't deal with this no more.
I got a question though. Did he give you all your money back?
Mm-mm.
So you just let it go like, I don't care about the money, I just want to go home.
He ended up filing bankruptcy.
Wow.
While I was in prison, there's a statute of limitation on it. I go to the counselor, say I have till today to make a police report for my lawyer stealing money. She said, well, I'm not going to call up the state police up here. I said, well, I need to make the police report.
That was out of your hands because you couldn't do it yourself.
Right.
Yeah, you could have called the state police though.
She told me I couldn't do it. So I called home, had my sister call the state police on the three-way. The state police came over there. They came over, I talked to them on the phone. I can't remember which one it was. When I got off the phone, the officer said, the counselor wants to see you in the office. She said, I just had your phone shut off for talking to the state police because they wouldn't call them over there for me to make a complaint. So she said, you'll never be able to call that number again. And it was my sister's number.
The three-way.
Right. So I called my sister, my other sister, and told her, I sent her a letter telling her to change her phone number and send me the new one. And I just added a new number. But it was like I'm fighting with the prison system.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And I'm fighting the attorneys. And then every time the newspaper would come and interview me, when I go back to my cell, the police went in there tearing my room up. So I told the newspaper guy about it. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. And I said, maybe you need to talk to him and let them know this is has nothing to do with the prison. This is just about my attorney. So it just got crazy, man.
Trashing your cell,
yeah,
messing up your personal property, and then they do it. They definitely do it.
Yeah.
Okay, so you made it home.
1998.
1998. So you did how many years in total?
From 92 to 98.
So you did 6 years. I got a question. You got me stuttering because it's all amazing and it's beautiful. But I got a question going back to your deal with the legal system. You would think that, well, I would say that given the fact that you exposed, because you gave him a black eye, the legal system itself, as far as with the attorneys, that's why they stood up, because they wanted to counter, you know what I'm saying, the damage that was done through Jay Wittenberg. But
what they wanted, when they took the case, they wanted me to know and wanted me to have faith in the legal system to let everybody else know that all of the attorneys are not like Wittenberg. And that's the same thing with police officers now. We grew up with a bunch of police officers in the neighborhood. And because of my situation, yeah, I hated the police, but I know we got to have police.
Right.
I know we can't live without police.
They're necessary. They are necessary to a certain extent.
I kind of felt like, you know, when stuff like this happens and when they don't have evidence to convict you, when they modify and make up stuff to convict you because they don't have
evidence
when they manufacture. Right, when they manufacture it, and then when that case gets overturned, I used to say they should get the same punishment that we was charged with.
Yes, right.
Because there's two sets of rules. There's a set of rules for them and there's a set of rules for us. And they don't apply the same.
Let me ask you this. You exposed them and you put them out there. Was there any attempts outside of what you went through? Because once you got in the hands of those 5 lawyers, once everything was in the light, it's clear that they started marching to a different drum to try and correct or trying to minimize or reverse as much of the damage that came from Jay Wittenberg's, the lawyer's actions as possible. But were you ever targeted for retaliation in any way, shape, or form?
Well, I felt like I was. One day I was coming home. Now, I want you to remember, Wittenberg was a really good friend of my father's. My father's, I believe it was my father's attorney, too. I was coming home one day. I was riding up Outer Drive, and there was a police car bagging out the driveway. I stopped for the police car, and when the guy seen who I was, he asked me to pull over.
This is the police.
This was a police officer. Well, it ended up being one of the police officers I knew through my father. He was a narcotics officer. And he said, I heard you was home, man. Congratulations, this and that. And I said, well, thanks. And he said, you know, you messed everything up for us. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, you kind of messed everything up for us. Wittenberg was supposed to be the head federal prosecutor. He was running for head federal prosecutor.
Wow,
and
man, you don't want that guy in there.
But at the time, I didn't know what he was talking.
But he was working for them. It was working out.
I guess they was working on behalf of them or whatever. However, it worked out. And he said, "Well, you know, you screwed things up for us. You got him fired, and we were trying to get him in as a prosecutor. If we would have got him in, we'd have had everything in the city sold up." Is what he told me. And I didn't really know what he was talking about. So at that time, he gave me a card. He said, well, if you ever need me, here you go. Here's my card. So prior to me bumping into the officer, which I'm not going to mention his name, me and my wife had went to Mississippi. My first time ever going there, she was like, well, we're finally going to go somewhere where you don't know nobody. You ever been to Mississippi? I said, no. So she said, okay. So we get to Mississippi. We go to Walmart. I hear somebody say, hey, Rich. I don't turn around because I've never been here. I don't know anybody.
Maybe they got the wrong guy.
Maybe they got the wrong guy. Guy walked up to me, and I turned around. It was a guy that used to live in my house that I purchased before I got locked up. I bought the house from his cousin. And I see him. So what are you doing down here? He said, my wife's family is from down here. So we exchanged numbers, come back home. He ended up coming by the house. He's hanging out and stuff. Didn't know he had got himself into some trouble. Didn't know. He never mentioned it. He came over one night and said, man, you got any tape? I said, what kind of tape? He said, some tape to tape up boxes I'm trying to move. So I had some tape in the basement, big wide rolls of black electrical tape, like super wide. And I said, that's all I got. You can use some of that. And he took some rolls of tape home with him. My wife started complaining because he's coming over every day. And she's like, we're not going to be feeding him. If he's coming over, he's going to have to contribute and buy some food too. So he came over a couple times and he asked me, he said, man, can I use the computer? So I left him in the basement, used the computer. He came back outside. So I had a buddy of mine come here from Texas. He was a truck driver. He was in his pickup truck. His truck broke down. I had the truck in the backyard fixing it, just ordered some parts for it. And this guy, Joe, ended up calling me. Joe was his name. Joe said, what you guys got going on today? It was like, we're going to go to the hobby store. He wants to pick up some stuff. He bought a motorcycle. He's taking the stuff back with him. Well, don't go nowhere. I'll be there. Joe didn't come. The police came.
Whoa.
Joe didn't come. Police came, kicked my door in, handcuffed me, sat me in the chair. I'm looking out the window. Joe pulls up in front of my house, drives down the street, turns around, comes back, pull up in the driveway. Now I'm saying to myself, if I see all these police at your house, I'm not coming. Right. So how are you so comfortable to keep coming and driving up and down the street and turning around? Well, they come in the house. I'm in the basement washing clothes. Two of my buddies are upstairs. We can go to the hobby place. They come in and take me right upstairs and come up the steps and say, look what we got. I said, what do you got? He said, we got a kilo of cocaine. I said, where'd you get that from? He said, we just found this in the basement. I said, that wasn't in my basement. And wow. I'm sitting at the table now, and he said, this is a kilo right here. And I said, I know who did that, because I'm looking at it, and the black tape in the computer. Yeah, and the black tape that I gave Joe is the black tape it's wrapped in. Wow. So now I said, I know who did this. And they said, well, no, you don't. I said, yes, I do. So I'm looking out the window, and I said, there he goes right there. And they said, that's not him. So now they take my buddy that was here from Texas. They lock him up over at the precinct not too far from the house. They tell me don't contact no lawyer, don't call nobody.
What?
Yeah. I said, what do you mean? Don't you call nobody. Here's my card. We'll be in touch with you. I get off the phone. I immediately call an attorney.
I got a question though. Were these local law enforcement or the federal?
Local.
Wow. Where?
Detroit.
Detroit police?
Yes.
Wow.
So he tell me you
Whoa.
don't call anybody. So now I've got this card for the narcotics officer.
That one that you backed in? I mean,
the one that I seen coming out the driveway.
Right.
Who said, if you ever need me, here's my number, call me. So I called him and talked to him, and he said, what's going on? I told him what happened. He said, well, they work for me. I said, what do you mean? He said, you ain't got nothing to worry about. You're good. They don't
want you.
This is not, nothing's going to happen behind this. So as I start getting closer and closer to court, I'm calling him. He won't answer. He won't respond to no calls at all. So I know another officer that works with him that been with him for a couple months now, but he knew him for years. And he said, man, I've been giving you your messages, but he won't respond. I'm asking him, did he talk to you? And he said, I don't know what's going on. So now I'm going back and forth to court. My buddy that was locked up with me works at the law office for my attorney. And he was like, Rich, this is some bull. I've been talking to the attorney, and he told me, he said, this is not looking good. They're going to try to nail you to the cross. He said, you better end up trying to get out of here unless you just want to go sit down for a while. And I ended up leaving, going on the run for a couple of years prior.
Your first experience, you was like, oh, this is coming from them.
It's coming from them.
Oh, man.
So I ended up, the guy from prison that worked at the law office, he's like, Rich, you better get out of here until we come up with the evidence to prove that this is how you were set up. So I ended up leaving the state. And man, you don't know, well, I can't say you don't know what it's like, but it's crazy when you out there running and it's just you and nerves is bad.
All day, every day.
You can't tell nobody what you're doing, who you really are. It was just a mess.
So what was the outcome? Did you wind up going back to prison?
2002 that happened. I was supposed to show up in court 2003. I didn't.
Did you have an attorney?
I had an attorney.
You were communicating with him?
I was communicating with my buddy that worked at the law office.
But I'm saying when you knew you were supposed to be at court, how did you get that information?
Through attorney I had at the time.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. So I ended up going on a run from 03 to 06, and I got caught up in out of state, and got pulled over and didn't have no ID, and they ended up taking me in, run my prints, and found out I was on the run.
So they brought you back. You wound up back in prison.
I wound up back in prison.
How much time did you do then?
This time they sentenced me to 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up doing about the same amount of time again.
6 years.
6 years, from 2006 to 2012.
Did you get out on an appeal? They overturn it, or they?
What happened, I end up one day writing to court to ask them what was going on with my appeal.
Okay.
The court informed me that no appeal had been filed on my behalf. So I had paperwork that the attorney gave to me that said he filed it. He lied to me, never filed it. I had it in my possession with his signature and everything. I sent that to them. The judge ended up sending him a letter stating, I don't know what you did, but you better straighten this mess out. So I'm going back and forth.
That was a violation of Sixth Amendment due process, right?
Yes. Okay. So now I'm going back and forth to court. I've got a court-appointed attorney now. And he's supposed to be straightening this mess out. I'm going back and forth. They're calling me from the prison back to the county jail 3, 4, 5 times. Finally, I'm like, what's going on, man? He asked me, do you have your papers for court? I said, what do you mean? He said, all your paperwork, your documents, do you have them? And something told me to say no. I said, no, why? He said, well, the prosecutor that was handling your case, she doesn't, they can't find the paperwork. Oh. So I'm just coming back and forth. So the next time that I went back to court again, now they're still trying to find the paperwork. When I go back to prison, I write the attorney discipline board at the grievance commission, and for some reason I gave them the prosecutor's name. They sent me back about 60, 70 pages. My prosecutor was sitting in the county jail facing life in prison for another drug case.
That he had botched or purposely sabotaged.
That she sabotaged. Her name was Karen Plants at the time.
Wow.
So he's not telling me that the prosecutor is in the county jail while I'm there. He didn't mention this. So when he asked me, do you have your paperwork? I said, no. Why? He said, oh, this is not looking good. He walked away. I said, where are you going, man? I said, what's going on? He said, well, they can't find your paperwork. So now they're taking me back and forth to prison, bringing me back on these hearing dates because they can't find my paperwork. So I asked for a new trial. They had the prosecutor come in and say, well, we can't grant him a new trial because evidence not available and the officers, witnesses are not available. But he didn't tell me that the prosecutor was sitting in county jail.
I mean, yeah, basically.
Waiting, facing life in prison, and didn't tell me that the officers on my case had been fired.
Because of the same type of activity.
Illegal activities. Didn't tell me none of this. So when I find out about her facing life in prison, now I'm getting inquisitive. I'm asking my lawyer all these questions. He doesn't want to tell me what's going on. He didn't even tell me she was in the county jail.
Right. Because back to the good old boys is where they trying to protect each other.
They don't tell on each other. That's a big thing. Even whether it's right or wrong, police officer, same thing. Street code, same thing. Nobody's telling on each other.
They try not to.
Yeah, they try not to. Mm-hmm. So I ended up going back and forth. So I'm coming back to the county jail. The trustee one day asked me, he said, man, why they keep bringing you back? Mm-hmm. I said, I don't know, but they can't find my paperwork. And he said, what's your name? And I told him my name, and he said, oh, that's your paperwork is what we're looking for.
So they had the inmates. The prisoners, inmates at the county jail searching through court documents
for my paperwork.
To find your paperwork.
That the prosecutor that's in the county jail facing life had. She was the last one in possession of them. So
wow.
Now I'm going back and forth. He said, well, they've got us down there looking for your paperwork. He said, what's going to happen if they don't find your paperwork? I said, well, they're going to have to let me go. Something's got to give.
Right.
So he came up like the next day and he said, man, they had us down there tearing that place apart. He said, your paperwork is nowhere to be found. He said, I guess you probably going to go home.
Lucky you.
So
that is crazy, man. That is, I mean, to have the run-in, I mean, the run-ins, and I mean, but it's just like they say, nothing happens, everything happens for a reason.
For a reason.
Now, throughout this process, it's clear that you've been through some heavy situations, and you didn't return back to race car driving.
No, I haven't.
Okay.
That was my life before I left. I mean, I was doing really well with it. Traveling around the country, doing a lot of match racing. Got a chance to do what I wanted to do.
Right. So, I mean, you still doing what you want to do, but now you're enjoying what you're doing, but you're helping others more so.
I'm helping others. And I kind of feel like now, when I came home off of this second time, when I just told you everything, I felt like I was being set up for a second time. I even said it in courtroom. I said, this feels like deja vu all over again.
Now, you said this was Detroit, but first you said that you were dealing with somebody. Who was that you had your initial contact with the law when you went to prison? Well,
they picked me up from Detroit and took me up to Ypsilanti, Ann Arbor area, and they charged me up there.
Okay, so you had a warrant coming out of the courts up there in Washington County somewhere.
Right.
Okay, but the second ordeal actually came from Wayne County.
Wayne County, Detroit.
But none of the law enforcement officials, I mean, but you say that with the lawyer, that's the connection to the DPD.
Right.
The one that says you messed everything up.
Right.
Okay. It was the Detroit Police Department.
Yeah, the second time was in Detroit. But this last incident, when all this paperwork came up missing, and I kept telling the lawyer, who didn't file my appeal. I kept saying, can you bring the prosecutor over here? We need to talk to him because something is not right here.
Right.
He tells he tells me, you can't talk to the prosecutor. And I'm like, why not? I said, there's a bunch of stuff going on here that's not making sense. Have him come over here. He said, well, he's not going to talk to you. So he walks away from me, walks over to the prosecutor. His back is to me. The prosecutor, he's talking to him, and the prosecutor keeps looking at me like he's saying something foul.
This is what I was going to ask you. Do you think that he knew? I mean, not that he knew 9 times out of 10, but given your last situation where you were able to cut through the bullcrap and get evidence to help you free yourself in the channels, was he like, this is him, he did this, he did that? You might not want to.
Well, it's possible, but the prosecutor, they already know your background from before because they trying you, they're looking at what you've been charged with before, they're looking at the past. So when I get that nasty feeling, I just stand up in the courtroom and I was like, excuse me, Mr. Prosecutor, can I talk to you for a minute? Something's not right here. I said, you can handcuff me, take me to the bullpen, but we need to talk. So I started talking to him. I'm telling him something's not right here. My paperwork's gone. The prosecutor that was handling my case, all my paperwork is gone. She's sitting in the county jail. I don't know if he knew how I knew that. And he said, so what are you trying to do? I said, I'm trying to go home today. He said, well, that's not going to happen.
All right.
I said, what do you mean that's not going to happen? He said, well, that's not going to happen. I said, well, I got faith in you. He said, now you want to play the Jesus game on me? I said, no, I got faith that you can do this. He said, you stay right here. I'll be right back. He went and got on the phone, made a phone call. He came back. He said, well, Mr. Walker, today is your lucky day. I said, what do you mean it's my lucky day? He said, you were my last case, and I'm retiring today. So I don't give a fuck what happens now. But he said, when the parole board comes, you're going to see him.
Wow. Wow.
Yep. Just that easy.
That is, as we would have to say, an amazing story, and it's crazy. And there's documentation, proof, everything, newspaper clippings, everything. You also, the lawyer, that the tape conversation that you had transcribed, you still have copies of the conversation, right?
I do, and
we're gonna bring that to you.
Yeah, we'll let them listen to it because it's people, you know, it's hard for them to believe that I was able to tape it from prison, but once you hear the conversation with me and him.
But listen, you're the reason they can't use 3 ways in the Department of Corrections right now.
Can't use them no more. And I think they changed the law on using
tape conversation.
Tape conversation.
But okay, so now this is some crazy stuff because the MDOC, prior to you taping that call with the lawyer, with Jay Wittenberg, and catching him up in his bullcrap, it wasn't illegal for you to use a 3-way call in the Michigan Department of Corrections. He used it to catch his lawyer up in a lie, free himself, bring justice to himself, and they cut it off and say you can't use it. You can't use a 3-way call. Now he's saying that we don't know for sure, but he's saying he thinks there's been some change to the law with regards to third-party the conversations.
Third-party consent.
Third-party consent. The law has changed because it was used to bring justice to somebody who had been railroaded, basically. So why did the laws change to prevent somebody else from doing the same thing in the future? If that's not a telltale sign that they're trying to preserve that system the way that they have it, where they can, if they decide it's time for you to go, they want you to go, you're gone. Regardless of how legal it is or illegal it is, they want to preserve their ability to operate in whichever manner they choose. It's not right. But that's why we brought it to you.
Yep.
Okay, so like we were saying early on, Rich is mentoring philanthropy in a lot of different areas. He has a lot of things going on with trying to, again, work with the youth. not just the youth, people coming home from prison, the kids, everything. He's got programs. He's doing some wonderful things.
So I'm still working with the Detroit Training Center. I'm a heavy equipment instructor for them. I work with people from the city of Detroit. I've recently been training city of Detroit workers for some heavy equipment courses. And we also work with guys that's coming home from prison.
Okay.
So I get a lot of people that come home from prison, got chip on their shoulder.
You know.
And yeah, I mean, you would never know I've been to prison because I don't carry it like that. It's in me. I know one day I feel like if I get pushed to the limit, it'll probably come out. I think I'm pretty good at controlling myself. If I tell people my story, they'll never believe, because I've kept this in for years. And I go certain places, like events we have every year. We see certain people and everybody say, hey, well, man, over the years, what have you been doing? And everybody talk about it, and I never really talked about it. And then the day when I decided that I was going to talk about it, I kind of started crying, because it was all like it was a relief for me to
finally be able to release it.
To tell people, because they were like, well, what you been doing? And I can't tell them. I don't want to tell them. I'm feeling bad about it, but I got it off my chest, and hey, just move forward. But I get students now that come home from prison. I had a young guy in there was beating on the desk, just beating, and I'm like, I said, you all right? He said, I feel like stabbing somebody in here.
Wow.
I said, man, I'm going to need you to come up here. I need to talk to you. I said, what's going on? He said, well, people treat me like crap. I said, why? I just got home from prison, and I just feel like I want to hurt somebody. I said, so you was locked up in level 4? No. I said, so you wasn't locked up 23 hours a day? No. I said, how much time did you do? He said, about 4 years. I said, and you got that much hate in you? Well, man, when I come home, everybody treating me like crap now. They don't want to be bothered with me. I said, well, maybe I should back up a little bit. When you left, what were you doing? Well, I was in there for carjacking and sticking people up. I said, so you left a bad taste in some people's mouth, everybody's mouths. Now you home, and all they remember is from when you left. So now all they saying in their mind is he's home again. Well, I ain't that person no more. And I said, that's why you here, for me to try to teach you a trade and teach you how to do something else instead of sticking people up. Well, you don't know what it's like. You ain't been there. So on my phone, I keep the little picture in the article. When I come out of prison, I was jumping up in the air, kicking both my feet, and it says, ex-lion son, I'm free now, come home. And I showed him that, and he said, that's you? I said, yeah. I said, so this shit you telling me about, I don't know what it's like.
You don't know.
I know exactly what it's like. So you can't run this no game on me to try to tell me I don't know what it's like to be in there. I was locked up 23 hours a day. We get 1 hour out. That 1 hour is hell.
Got to go swing, yeah.
Yeah, so we know.
So, okay, age group wise, I know you said people coming from prison and the kids, because you said heavy machinery. Is it like the younger kids, are they operating the big machines? Or?
Well, younger kids is like what I do. I have a friend of mine that has some machines on the weekend. He's got machines, and I asked him, how do you have machines and your kid can't even run the machine? He said, well, I don't have the patience for it.
Wow. So
I was able to put his son on the machine in less than a half hour and have his son driving the machine and dumping and this and that. He went to lunch and came back. He couldn't believe it.
Wow.
So what he allowed me to do was, we have another friend of ours, a mutual friend that's up in Albion, Michigan, has a mentorship program.
Okay.
He had him bring some of the students down, and they did an article on me from Albion newspaper about me working with the kids. So what I want to do is, I started out at the age of 10. My stepdad woke me up one morning and said, hey, get up, we got to go to work. I said, I don't have a job. So he kind of knocked the crap out of me, said, get your butt up, we going to work.
Right.
So I ended up going to work with him. He taught me how to drive the bulldozer. Now on the weekends, I want to get up. I want to go hang out. We got to go pull this motor out this car. We got to go work on the car. We got to do this. As a kid, you think you're being punished.
But
You don't understand at that time what he's trying to do.
Right.
So my stepdad is 84 years old now and has all his wits, smart as can be. If I get on that ground and get up under a car, he getting up under there. And I thank him. You know, I tell him, man, I didn't know what you was doing at the time, but you gave me some trades.
And now you appreciate
I
it.
really appreciate them.
And now you giving
And
back.
now I'm giving back.
That's why it's lit up. Spotlight. Richard Walker. We'll see you.